What is development? I would say development is positive growth and change.
What we mean by development is that we enable people to live better lives.
I would say development is just any sort of changes in government, society, or culture because of economic investment in an area.
How do we make someone's life better?
Going further from what we had, whether it be through other countries helping us or through our own doing.
Really nothing more but people trying to figure out what a good way for their society to change.
Just positive change.
You know, we've had what we call development programs and development agencies for about 60 years now. And it goes back to the first one was about rebuilding Europe after the Second World War. And then as that was done, they turned their attention to the newly independent countries that were decolonized. Often development takes the form of building stuff. Building schools, building factories, building highways, building airports.
I think that many people in development in the past have put the emphasis on a developed society is an economically rich society that is growing richer and richer all the time. And having prosperity is important, but also the question of who gets the prosperity, who has the possibility for it. The inequality of power that people have is a huge obstacle that gets in the way of their having a chance to have their say and to have their concerns taken into account. There's a legacy, I think, in many parts of the world that somehow government has got to be by people who are richer or smarter, and that often leaves out a lot of people who, for one reason or another, have not had the opportunities because they've grown up in another country or because they've been discriminated against because of the color of their skin or their gender.
Development used to be thought of as just being about economics, but it's a concept which is broader now, and it incorporates all of these different aspects. There would be economic aspects, how resources are distributed, whether people have access to live full, healthy, and happy lives. There would be cultural aspects, whether people have the right to have the ability to live their lives in the way in which they want to. There would be political aspects to development, which have to do with freedoms, political freedom. Development has to do with how we think about questions of poverty and inequality in the world as a whole, and the way in which the world is structured.
One of the most important things is to start off thinking about the issues from the lives of women. Women have not participated in the design and management of development. They haven't designed the policies for increasing literacy, for increasing economic resources, for providing social services. They've not been permitted to participate in this. But we can see that each time there's been a big shift in development policies, the costs of those shifts have been borne by women. Women and their dependents, just in households, are the vast majority of the poor. Some estimates are that they constitute 70 to 80% of the poor, and they're overrepresented in the poorest of the poor.
What's key to living better lives? Better health services, obviously very important. Education, hugely important. Better ability to feed yourself, to have food available for the whole family. And that's very important. And all that means that you need better incomes.
A lot of these development projects actually did do something to make people's lives better off. And so that's the idea of what development ought to be.
Well, there are many global issues which impede development. I don't know whether they actually stop it altogether, but they make it more difficult. Weak governments are a particular issue. Sometimes they're corrupt governments, which are an issue, so they're incapable of delivering the sort of services you need for development. There are many countries which have suffered from conflict, and internal wars cause immense problems because you don't have the ability to deliver services, people's livelihoods are interrupted.
Development can go badly if it's done in corrupt ways. So there are resource development projects in which government officials just insist on kickbacks. They get very rich. Meanwhile, those resources should be, possibly going into taxation, so they benefit the whole community rather than going into the pockets of the government. There can be development that has really bad environmental consequences. So that's not good development. That would be on the maldevelopment side.
I think our most pressing development concerns are where decisions are not made by the overwhelming majority of people, but made by a small elite. There's a lot of development, in one sense of development, that is not democratic. We often have for the people, but we don't have by the people. And so we need to think of more ways in which citizens can make a real difference in governance. So I think we need to expand democracy, deepen democracy, and that's not just voting, but it's what comes before and after voting.
And this especially affects indigenous and tribal populations. Because they are isolated and weak within the society, they're not strong, powerful political forces, it can happen that their areas get picked on. The consequences, the effects on them can be much more severe, much more demoralizing and devastating, even than on other people who get displaced.
Development sounds like a very abstract concept, but it's actually something which is closely related to your everyday life. And the way in which the world is structured, as you know, if you look at the news, is that things that happen in other parts of the world affect us, either directly or indirectly. And so the more problems there are in other parts of the world in terms of frustration or inequality, it's going to in some way affect your life, whether you see it in the short term or in the long term.
The rest of the world, there are people suffering extreme poverty. There are people who don't have enough to eat, who can only eat once a day. There are children who are malnourished. There are many children who are dying of malnutrition. There are many children who are dying of malaria and other tropical diseases. There are many women who are dying in childbirth. There are many young people who can't go to school. And I think that as a young person in the West, you should be aware of the immense privilege you have vis-a-vis those people, and think about whether this is a just world and what we should do to try and make the world more just.